Our first game on PTCGO for Rebel Clash is Flapple with Sableye V. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch and today we are finally able to play Rebel Clash on PTCGO, and we thought we'd start off with a deck that not only features our mascot but also features one of the cool cards that you could potentially pick up on the cheap for Rebel Clash, and that's Flapple. You could probably pick up a playset of Flapple and Applin for a couple of packs online. They're not super expensive at the moment, so they're definitely worth checking out. And the rest of the cards in the list are pretty easy to get as well. What we'll do is we'll jump over and we'll take a look at it right now. So as I mentioned, most of the cards in the list aren't too hard to find. We've got a 4/4 line of Flapple with Apple Drop, and let's talk about why this card is so good. Flapple, it's a stage 1 with 80 HP. It's got an attack called Acid Spray which does 60, and if we flip a coin and get heads, then we discard an energy from our opponent's active. That's pretty decent. Like, that's not a bad attack at all. But the key for us is going to be the ability Apple Drop. Once during a turn, we can put 2 damage counters on one of our opponent's Pokemon, and then once we've done that, we can shuffle this Pokemon and all the cards attached to it back into our deck. So that means that we're going to have a nice way to easily be able to snipe damage counters onto our opponent's side of the field to be able to set up attacks for our Sableye V. It's kind of the same idea that we'd use for Obstagoon with Sableye, except Flapple I think is a little bit more usable in that it's got a good mid-range attack and you can use it over and over and over. And now that we've also got cards like that Scoop Up Net as well, we can potentially get a little bit more use out of it, but we'll talk about that in a second. Obviously we are going to pair it with 3 copies of Sableye V with Crazy Claws, 10 plus 60 for every damage counter on our opponent's side of the field. Oh, sorry, not on the side of the field. What am I talking about? On our opponent's active Pokemon. So that means that Crazy Claws can very easily be dealing a lot of damage. If we get 1 Flapple off, we're going to be dealing 130 for 2 energy. If we get 2, we're going to be able to be doing upwards of 240, 250 damage. Very, very strong. If for whatever reason we do manage to get even more damage counters on there, we can potentially one-shot things like VMAX Pokemon, and those tag teams are going to be relatively easy for us to get as well. 2 Flapple and an attack from Sableye, and we can knock out any tag team, and we can get pretty close to knocking out a VMAX as well. So this card obviously very strong. We played it with Obstagoon before. Flapple could potentially push this one over the top into a slightly more competitive bracket. Obviously load search is an option for you as well, to be able to search for a trainer from your discard pile and put it into your hand. Now, there are obviously going to need to be some support cards to get this working. In the past, we've used things like Bead to try and accelerate energy, just manually attaching as well. But in this list, we've opted to go for a 2/2 Porygon-Z list deck engine. What am I talking about? I'm just so excited. Crazy Code is really strong, and it lets us use a whole bunch of the new energy that we've got coming out in this set, Capture Energy specifically, to get ourselves set up in the early game. We've got a 2/2 line of that. We've got a single copy of Yveltal-GX, very, very strong with that Sableye V, in that we can use Doom Count GX to try and get those big knockouts before we need to use a Sableye. It's good for those VMAX Pokemon, 2 Flapples, and suddenly Doom Count is active. We can get 3 prizes just like that. Super, super easy. So Yveltal is pretty strong, and we can potentially attack with Sonic Evil in this deck, since it's easier for us to attach basic energy and those special energy with Porygon-Z. Onto the support, we've cut down from a 4 line of Jirachi to 3. It's tending to be the way we're moving at the moment in this format. Whether it's accurate to real life or not is another question, but 3 Jirachi seems fine. It's working in Japan at the moment, which is where this list is from, so we may as well use it in our tournaments as well. Stellar Wish obviously still very strong, especially with that new Scoop Up Net, which we'll talk about more in a second, and 2 copies of Dedenne-GX. I know I was talking about how you'll be able to pick up the new cards relatively cheaply, but there are some expensive ones down there that we might need to pick up. That's all the Pokemon that we need. We realistically only need to get that little Flapple Sableye engine going, and as long as we can do that, we should be fine. When it comes to searching for Pokemon, we've got a very different search kind of lineup than we'd normally have. We've only got 2 Quick Ball. I don't know what's going on. Normally we'd play 4, but in this list we only really need 2. And the reason for that is because we have Capture Energy in this deck. So I'm going to talk about that right now. Capture Energy, 4 copies in the list. we can use this special energy to help ourselves search out basic Pokemon. It can be any basic as well. We can find GXs, Vs, whatever we need. So we can use this to find things like Sableye. Maybe we need to find Applins, maybe we need to find a Jirachi for some extra support. We can use capture energy to do that, and it means that we don't need to necessarily have those quick balls, which is okay for us since we've got 6 ways to search for basic Pokemon. We've also got 6 ways to search for our stage 1s, which we're going to need, especially since Porygon-Z and Flapple are integral to this deck. We've got 3 copies of Evolution Incense and 3 copies of Pokemon Communication in order to find them. And Pokecoms is actually a really cool card in the sense that we can use the Scoop Up Net to grab a Pokemon off the field, search it away with Pokecom, and find the one that we need for that turn. So a really interesting little extra bit that we can use from the introduction of Scoop Up Net from Rebel Clash. This card we talked about being one of the must-haves for the set. 4 copies of Scoop Up Net going into this list. We don't have Switch, we don't have things to move in and out of the active apart from this Scoop Up Net, so as long as we can find them when we need them, we should be fine. It means that we can get those Jirachis cycling around as well. We can use them multiple times if we need to. Scoop Up Net, a very, very strong card. Also, we would be remiss to mention Rare Candy. We have a Stage 2 that is critical to the way we play the game, so we probably need to find a Rare Candy at some point. Porygon-Z, unlike some of the decks that we've played in the past, is not necessarily critical to the way the deck works, but obviously we would love to have it out there, so Rare Candy is a necessity. Moving on to the supporters, and the supporter lineup is a pretty standard one. We've got 4 copies of Professor's Research, 4 copies of Cynthia, and 1 copy of Marnie as draw supporters. That's 9 draw supporters. A little bit of shuffle from Cynthia, a little bit of disruption from Marnie, but the big boy coming into the set, we've got 2 Boss's Orders. This card is so good. Being able to gust out whatever we want for the effect of a supporter is something that we've been missing for a long time, since Guzma and Lysander were available to us, and I just feel so happy knowing that I don't need to pay a cost for gusting up anything. I don't need to have 2 custom catches anymore. I don't need to have a great catcher to bring up a GX. I can just go Boss's Orders, take a knockout. That's pretty good to me. We don't have any way to recur these supporters. The only way we're going to use them is when we have them in our hand. So if we have to discard them early, it's not going to be great, but I would prefer knowing that I can gust with a supporter twice, potentially, to not having that option at all. Now, we've already talked about capture energy in the list. We also have some other energy to play around. We've got 3 copies of draw energy. When we've got some attackers that attack with colorless energy cost, draw energy is actually just a good generic energy to be able to kind of accelerate your hand a little bit. Just give you that little bit of extension that you need to find the extra cards to help you win the game. We just attach this to a Pokemon that needs colorless energy and draw a card. It's as simple as that. But with Porygon-Z, we're not going to waste our attaching this card. It can kind of feel a little bit weak sometimes, but if we do use it with Porygon-Z, we can attach it and then attach another energy as well, so that's pretty strong. We also have 4 copies of the Fighting Dark Fairy unit. This is obviously going to be a way that we can power up things like Yveltal-GX and Sableye V very quickly. Unit energy is a special energy that we can accelerate with Porygon-Z, so we can get a Sableye powered up in a single turn. And we also want to make sure that we've got the extra option. We've got 2 dark energy in the list as well. There could be an argument to put in things like rainbow energy or maybe even an aurora, but the basic energy are always pretty good, so we may as well just chuck them in there. We don't always need to be using crazy code. We can just manually attach a dark energy. That's fine by me. So this deck looks really, really interesting. I'm glad that this is the first one that we're taking a look at because it looks like a lot of fun. And that's what we're all about here on the channel, making sure that we're having a good time playing Pokemon. Sableye is our mascot, so we're going to use it. We're going to use it with Flapple. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, we can have some success with it on the ladder. So here they come, the first games for Rebel Clash. I'm so excited. Okay, we're playing... I'm not sure exactly what those colours mean, but we're going to go for heads here. We should have gone for tails. We usually go for tails, that's okay. We are going to start with Jirachi here, which is pretty strong. No Applin though, which is a little disappointing, but we've got all the other cards that we need, and we've got capture energy as well, which is important. It's a shame that we're not going to be able to place it anywhere. really impactful. Our opponent looks like they're playing Spiritomb, which is a deck that has seen a lot of hype recently, and is especially doing quite well in the Limitless events. Recently saw top 8 position there, and could also do well tonight. A Rare Candy is a pretty good card to get. I think what we're going to do here is we're just going to... We could play this Yveltal down and then capture energy onto it, which seems pretty good. We'll be able to find ourselves a Porygon, only the one in the deck for us, so we want to get that. We've got a Research as well, and a Scoop Up Net. Now, is it worth grabbing the Research here? It probably is. The last thing we want to do is leave ourselves with a completely dead hand. We can Research, and we'll be able to find more energy and stuff later. It's a shame we get rid of that Rare Candy, though, but we've managed to find another one, and more importantly, we've got an Applin, so we're going to be able to get into our Flapple next turn. Because of the way this deck kind of works, I'm not anticipating that we're going to be able to get too much going on turn 1s in many of our games, but I think this is a pretty solid setup. Our opponent's gone for Pokemon Catcher here, and they're going to be able to hit into this Sableye V, which is very upsetting. They've got a Quick Ball, so they'll probably Dedenne as well. No, ADP looks like it's going to be the card of choice, so they've probably got a Research in hand. So now for them, they're going to be able to at least put another 10 damage on. They've got a Jinx, so they could move some damage around from other Spiritombs, and they're going to be able to get that extra Rainbow Energy tick onto the ADP. So this Spiritomb is going to have minimum 3 damage counters on it, and we'll see whether they can... Yep, they found the Hustle Belt as well, so they've got pretty much everything that they need here. They're going to Anguish Cry. We survive on 160 though, which is really strong, but we do need to look out for something like a Zigzagoon. That could very easily make our life a little bit difficult here. What we can do is we can Scoop Up Net, and that actually gives us a Pokemon to use with Pokemon Catcher, Communication, sorry, which is always very good. We can grab that Porygon-Z here to give ourselves the Rare Candy option, and this means we're going to be able to accelerate to this Sableye if we want, or we could potentially do some damage with something else. I think probably this Sableye seems fine. Obviously disappointing that it is on 160 HP already, but we should be fine. We're going to get ourselves another Applin, and then we'll Cynthia. Hopefully we can get ourselves into some cool stuff. Look at this, we've actually managed to grab, there's a Dark Energy here, so we can attach that to Sableye to take a knockout. We've got a Draw Energy, so we could potentially attach that to something as well. We've got the Evolution Incense, so we might be able to find a Flapple. That's probably a pretty strong move here, so we'll grab that Flapple with Apple Drop, and we'll be able to place some damage counters on the board. We're probably looking at... I mean, we could... let me have a think here. We can just take the straight knockout. Leaves the Sableye in the active. And Crazy Code. Let's just Crazy Code here and put the Draw Energy on the active. Because what we could potentially do is we could just go into the Yveltal, which makes it a little bit more difficult for our opponent to take a knockout next turn. We'll be able to get a knockout with our Yveltal, and then they will also probably struggle to do anything other than use ADP next turn. So I think this is fine. What we can do is we can just, well, you're going to need to pop this Flapple actually, because we can't absorb Vitality. I thought it did 30 instead of 20. It's okay. So we'll pop the Flapple, we'll shuffle those into the deck. 10 HP left on the Spiritomb means that we can just absorb Vitality, we can get rid of that Spiritomb, heal the damage on us, and it's going to be unlikely that they'll be able to get to 180 next turn. It's not to say that it's impossible, but it's going to be unlikely. The Shrine of Punishment ticks are a bit annoying, but it's going to put us in range of this ADP potentially. Going to Quick Ball away the Dark City, not Dark City, the Black Market Prism, which is ironic because it would actually help out us as well. And going for a Marnie here. That new animation for Marnie is so much better. Now we actually get to use like our time efficiently. Pokemon Catcher here twice coming up, both times a fail, which is good. So we're not at risk of losing something like the Porygon-Z, which would be annoying, or the Flapple, which could potentially be even worse. And it looks like they are going to go into the ADP here, and this is really good for us. This is exceptionally good because it means that we are going to be able to get ourselves a knockout on this ADP this turn, because we've got the Shrine is going to tick once, put it up to 20. We can search for a Flapple with our Evo Incense. Then we can Doom count because there will be 40 damage already on the active ADP. This is the absolute perfect situation for us to be in. We can also put down another Applin. We can use Porygon-Z to attach these energies. We'll Apple drop first, just make sure we do that. We can get that damage counters onto the ADP. We could Porygon-Z, we can attach these two energy to the Sableye. Obviously now it's probably okay to attach them there. Obviously they could just Zigzagoon and knock it out, but that's fine. We Doom count GX. We're going to be able to knock out pretty much anything else on our opponent's side of the field with a attack from Yveltal anyway, so we should be fine. And we managed to find Cynthia and Flapple off of the prizes, as well as a boss's orders if we need it. So we are looking like we're in a pretty good spot here. Even if our opponent does take a knockout on one of these two Pokemon, we need to take 2 knockouts in the time that they need to take 3. So we are looking really, really good. Obviously, it's a good matchup when your opponent has low base HP, especially when they're putting damage on themselves like Spiritomb does. But, you know, we can't complain. Sometimes it just happens that way that you get a good matchup, and why not make it the first game that you play in Rebel Clash. That big charm going onto the Spiritomb is frustrating, not because they'll be able to get more damage onto it, but because it's going to be harder for us to knock out with Flapple. I would have liked to have been able to get the knockout on it this turn, and then potentially win the game, but it looks like we're going to need to potentially find another way to deal with that. Looks like it's going to come into the active. So with 60 HP left, we are a long way away from taking the knockout here. And it looks like they're going to use Jinx. They might actually move all of that damage to the active, and they have, so that they can take that full damage and knockout on the Yveltal. Means there's 50 HP left. I mean, we're going to be able to take the knockout on the Sableye. We'll put the Jirachi up. We've got the Scoop Up Net here, so that's fine by us. I'll play down the Flapple as well. Now, we could potentially be a little bit risky here, although, this is an interesting one. I think we probably just Stellar Wish, right? Because we've got the Stellar Wish. We may as well go for it, see what we get. Nothing great here. We can grab the Pokémon Communication. That could potentially become another Pokemon after we've scooped up one of our Jirachi. Probably the one in the active. Might be able to find ourselves another Applin, which would be really good. Potentially another attacker, because we are running low. Yeah, we're in this really weird spot where we don't realistically want to put our Sableye into the active, but I guess it's not the end of the world. We'll promote Flapple here and find ourselves another Applin. I think it's going to have to be another Applin because we can potentially take our last prize with Acid Spray from our Flapple if we need to. We do need to find 2 colourless energy though, so that could be a little awkward. Now, is it worth using Apple Drop at all here? Because I mean, we're gonna take a knockout with Sableye V. Any damage that we put onto our opponent's board is just going to make it easier for them to take a knockout. Not that it's a massive deal, but I think it's probably okay for us to just Scoop Up Net this Flapple, promote the Sableye, and then give ourselves 2 Flapple next turn. Because that way we're going to be able to take a knockout on pretty much anything that they promote. I think that's probably going to be the way to go. We can Scoop Up Net the active. It seems real counterintuitive. Put the Sableye in the active. We've got 2 Applin down. We've got 3 Flapple in hand. So the worst thing that could possibly happen is that we get Marnie and they all go to the bottom of the deck. But I feel like that's probably not the end of the world for us. We've got to capture energy as well. So now we're only 1 energy away from being able to Acid Spray if our opponent takes a knockout. And obviously, if they don't take a knockout at all, then we just are going to win the game. There's a Hustle Belt. They're going into the Spiritomb. And a Quick Ball, getting rid of a Jinx. So they could be doing a little bit of digging here. Depends on what's going on. But they have ADP'd, haven't they? So we are in a bit of trouble here. Looks like Feehone's coming up. I've based all of this on the fact that they haven't used their GX attack, and they have. But they need the energy. So they're going to be going for it here. Maybe this was a horrific decision, but it's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to get through it together. It's not an issue. It's not an issue. Everyone's in the comments now being like, Rich, what are you doing? You're stupid. Don't do it. But it's okay. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Acrobike coming through here. There's so many cards in our opponent's hand. Another Acrobike coming out. This Fione could be frustrating as well if the switch does happen, but we've got the We've got the energy, so we can always just attach them. The worst one we could have come out to the active is Porygon-Z, but we get to choose, so it's not that bad at all. Spiritomb starting to power itself up here. Now I'm starting to get a little bit nervous. We have the Jinx. They need to find, I would say, they need to find an energy. They just need to find an energy. They're going for the Jirachi here. And I wonder if there's any way that they can actually find an energy just with this Jirachi, unless they've got another Acro Bike or something like that. Tag Call, maybe? No, nothing happening. So it looks like it's going to be Whirlpool Suction. We can put forward pretty much anything we want here. I think it's probably going to be this Applin, because then we can use the Flapple to get ourselves out of the active. We might be tempted to put the Jirachi up there, but we won't do that. And they're going to switch. They're just going to switch into the Jinx here, and then go for Pokemon Catcher. They fail the flip again. And that's the turn. Okay, so we should be able to just win this game. We've got 2 Flapples. We can put them both into play. We can use their ability to get the damage onto the Jinx, and then Sableye V will come through for the victory. We took a calculated risk in the end there, and managed to get off scot-free. We've got the knockout, we've got the game, and we've shown that obviously Flapple and Sableye have excellent little synergies there, and of course Sableye winning the first game for us in Rebel Clash. Of course he does, because you're on the Sableyes, so why not win with one? So that's it, a successful start. Almost screwed it up there. If they had found the energy, we would have been in a bit of trouble, but that's okay, it didn't happen, and we managed to get out with the win, and Flapple showed us just how good it can be. I think there's a lot of potential in this card. Whether it's going to be tier 1 with things like ADP Zacian and Dragapult is another question altogether, but I think it's definitely worth investigating. And if you've already got all the cards from other sets and you just need the Rebel Clash stuff, it's a pretty good place to start. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, you're probably looking at 2 packs for the full line of Flapples, maybe a couple of packs for Scoop Up Net. Now, Boss's Orders is pretty expensive. I need maybe 8 or 9 packs, maybe 10 to get 2 of those, but you need 10 each, I think, is the amount that we paid for them when we were setting this one up. But, you know, you might just be lucky enough to pack one, but, you know, Boss's Orders, 10 packs, was like, you're going to use this card anyway, you may as well go for it. But, hey, if you said to me that I could play a relatively competitive deck day 1 on Rebel Clash for about 25 packs, I'd say, yeah, that's a pretty solid effort. So I reckon this is a good place to start. That's it. We're done for the first Rebel Clash game on PTCGO. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, consider subscribing. Click the button just there. Over here is some videos for you to peruse. And down the bottom is our brand new playlist, Rebel Clash games on PTCGO. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at @theSableyes_YT. And apart from that, we'll see you all next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.